Welcome back to Globewise Entertainment, your ultimate destination for hidden gems, shocking classics, and unforgettable movie moments. Today, we're diving into a bold and daring era of cinema with 13 X-rated 1970s movies that are actually awesome. These aren't just controversial films, they're cinematic experiences that pushed boundaries and left audiences talking. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that subscribe button now and join our movie-loving family. And after watching, tell us in the comment box, which of these 1970s classics do you find the most unforgettable? Let's get started. Don't look now. When people hear the phrase X-rated 1970s movie, they often expect pure shock psychological thriller that blends grief, intimacy, and supernatural terror into one unforgettable cinematic experience. Directed by the visionary Nicholas Reg, this 1973 masterpiece follows a married couple, played by Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, who travel to the eerie canals of Venice after the tragic loss of their young daughter. What begins as a quiet attempt to heal soon spirals into a chilling mystery involving psychic visions, cryptic warnings, and a shadowy figure in a red coat. Yes, the film gained attention in the 1970s for its bold, intimate realism, but that's only a small piece of why it's considered awesome. The emotional authenticity between the two leads makes their relationship feel deeply human and heartbreakingly real. Instead of cheap thrills, the film delivers layered storytelling, stunning cinematography, and a creeping sense of dread that lingers long after the credits roll. Reg's signature editing style, fractured timelines, visual symbolism, and subtle foreshadowing turns the entire film into a puzzle. Every glance, every reflection in the water, every flash of red feels meaningful. It's not just a horror film. It's an exploration of grief, fate, and the terrifying idea that some warnings come too late. What makes Don't Look Now truly stand out among 1970s X-rated films is its artistic ambition. It wasn't exploitation, it was elevated genre storytelling. The tension builds slowly but relentlessly, leading to one of the most shocking and unforgettable endings in psychological thriller history. For modern audiences, this film proves that the 1970s weren't just about controversy, they were about bold filmmaking that pushed emotional and cinematic boundaries. If you love slow-burn suspense, intelligent horror, and movies that reward close attention, this is an absolute must-watch. 12. Phantasm, 1979. When people hear the phrase X-rated 1970s movies, they often think of grindhouse shockers and controversial exploitation films. But sometimes, the rating system of the era blurred lines. And that's where Phantasm enters the conversation. While not adult in nature, this late 70s cult horror masterpiece pushed boundaries so aggressively that it earned an X rating upon release before later being reclassified. And trust us, it absolutely deserved the hype. Directed by the visionary Don Coscarelli, Phantasm wasn't just another low-budget horror flick. It was a surreal nightmare that blended science fiction, supernatural horror, and dream logic into something audiences had never quite seen before. The story follows a young boy, Mike, who becomes convinced that something sinister is happening at the local funeral home. The mysterious tall man, played with chilling elegance by Angus Scrimm, isn't just a mortician. He's harvesting the dead and transforming them into dwarf-like creatures for use in another dimension. You read that right? And then there's the Silver Sphere. That iconic, flying metallic orb, armed with blades and drills, became one of horror's most unforgettable weapons. It's simple, it's terrifying, and it's pure 1970s imagination unleashed. What makes Phantasm actually awesome isn't just the scares, it's the atmosphere. The film feels like a dream you can't wake up from. Scenes flow with eerie logic, supported by an unforgettable synthesizer score that amplifies every unsettling moment. Unlike many horror films of its era, this one didn't rely purely on shock. It created a lingering sense of cosmic dread. Financially, it was a massive success for an independent production. Made on a modest budget, It became a cult hit and launched an entire franchise. More importantly, it proved that creativity could outshine big studio resources. Today, Phantasm is celebrated as one of the most influential horror films of its time. You can see its DNA in everything from indie horror to big-budget supernatural thrillers. It dared to be strange, abstract, and ambitious, and audiences responded. For modern viewers discovering it for the first time, it's a reminder that the 1970s weren't just bold, they were fearless. 11. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. When people hear the phrase X-rated 1970s movie, they usually expect something purely scandalous. But Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is something far more outrageous and far more brilliant. Released in 1970 and directed by Russ Meyer, with a screenplay co-written by future film critic legend Roger Ebert, this film wasn't just controversial, it was chaotic, colorful, and completely unpredictable. The story follows an all-girl rock band called the Carrie Nations as they head to Hollywood chasing fame and fortune. What they find instead is a whirlwind of excess, wild parties, manipulative power players, overnight celebrity, and the dark side of ambition. The film dives headfirst into the era's obsession with sex, drugs, rock music, and fame, but it does so with a wink, a smirk, and a dose of sharp satire. What makes this film actually awesome isn't just its bold content, it's the energy. The editing is fast. The colors are explosive. The performances are intentionally over the top. It feels like a comic book version of 1970s Hollywood, turned up to maximum volume. And then there's the twist. Without spoiling it, the final act shifts into unexpected psychological territory that shocked audiences at the time. The movie moves from glamorous satire to something darker and more intense, proving it's not just a flashy exploitation flick, it's a film willing to take risks. Critics were divided upon release. Some dismissed it as outrageous trash. Others recognized it as a sharp satire of fame culture and moral panic. Over time, its reputation has grown, and today it's considered a cult classic that perfectly captures the chaotic spirit of early 70s counterculture. What's fascinating is that despite the X rating, this isn't a traditional adult film. It's a high-energy satire about excess, celebrity obsession, and how quickly dreams can spiral out of control. In many ways, it predicted the celebrity meltdown culture we still see today. For modern viewers, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls feels like a time capsule of raw 1970s filmmaking, bold, messy, experimental, and completely unfiltered. 10. Fritz the Cat, 1972. When it comes to adult animation, few films are as daring or controversial as Fritz the Cat. Directed by the legendary Ralph Bakshi, this 1972 cult classic broke every rule Hollywood had about cartoons, proving that animation wasn't just for kids. Based on the comic by Robert Crumb, Fritz the Cat dives headfirst into the counterculture of the 1970s, sex, drugs, race, politics, and all the messy chaos of urban life. Following Fritz, a rebellious, womanizing anthropomorphic cat, the film satirizes American society with sharp, often shocking humor. Unlike anything audiences had seen before, it's X-rated for a reason, but that very edge is what gives it lasting cultural impact. Bakshi's animation style is raw, vibrant, and full of energy. He blends adult themes with clever social commentary, making it as much a critique of society as it is a boundary-pushing piece of entertainment. Every scene bursts with personality, from psychedelic parties to wild confrontations with authority, making it a visual and narrative roller coaster. What makes Fritz the Cat monetizable today is its cult status and historic importance. Clips, reviews, retrospectives, and reaction videos draw both nostalgia-driven audiences and curious younger viewers exploring the roots of adult animation. Its controversy alone sparks engagement, while its artistry keeps audiences watching till the very end. So, if you're ready for a film that's bold, provocative, and unapologetically 70s, Fritz the Cat is a must-watch. Just remember, it's not your childhood cartoon, It's a wild ride through the adult side of the psychedelic era. 9. Performance, 1970. When it comes to boundary-pushing cinema, Performance is a landmark that still turns heads decades later. Directed by Nicholas Regg and Donald Cammell, this 1970 film isn't just X-rated for shock. It's an audacious dive into the dark, twisted corners of identity, crime, and sexual obsession. The story follows Chaz, a violent London gangster on the run, who hides out in the decadent home of Turner, a reclusive rock star played by the iconic Mick Jagger. What unfolds is an intense, surreal exploration of desire, power, and the blurred lines between reality and performance. Scenes of sexual experimentation, mind-bending psychological games, and hallucinatory visuals make this film both provocative and hypnotic. What makes Performance truly remarkable is its daring style. Regg's fragmented editing, dreamlike cinematography, and innovative use of music create a psychedelic experience that immerses viewers in a world where control is an illusion and identity is fluid. It's a film that challenges conventional storytelling while offering raw, magnetic performances, especially from Jagger, whose charisma drives much of the tension. Despite its explicit content, Performance is celebrated today as a cult classic. It's not just about X-rated scenes, it's about a fearless artistic vision that explores human desires, fears, and transformations in ways few films dared to in the 1970s. For fans of provocative cinema, psychological thrillers, and boundary-pushing artistry, this movie is an unforgettable ride. 8. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. When most people hear X-rated 70s movies, Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange immediately stands out, not just for its controversial rating, but for its audacious, unforgettable impact on cinema. Adapted from Anthony Burgess's dystopian novel, this film dives into a disturbing future where ultraviolence, social control, and moral questions collide in shocking, hypnotic ways. The story follows Alex Delarge, a charismatic yet terrifying delinquent, whose nights of ultraviolence and classical music-fueled chaos bring him into the hands of a government experiment designed to reform criminals. What follows is a provocative exploration of free will, ethics, and the fine line between civilization and brutality. Kubrick's visionary direction, combined with iconic visuals and unsettling classical soundtrack, makes the violence almost hypnotic, a stark commentary on society's attempts to control human nature. Despite its X rating and infamous bans in several countries, the film's artistic daring has made it a must-watch classic. It challenges viewers, sparks debate, and leaves an impression that lingers long after the credits roll. In fact, its controversial content became part of its allure, turning it into a cultural touchstone for bold, boundary-pushing cinema. 7. Pink Flamingos, 1972. If there's one 1970s movie that redefined shock cinema, it's John Waters' legendary cult classic, Pink Flamingos. This isn't just an X-rated film, it's a bold, chaotic, and unapologetically outrageous experience that still divides audiences today. The film follows Divine, the iconic drag queen and queen of filth, on a quest to maintain the title of filthiest person alive. Along the way, she clashes with eccentric rivals in a series of increasingly outrageous and boundary-pushing antics, ranging from grotesque pranks to jaw-dropping stunts that left 1970s audiences simultaneously horrified and mesmerized. What makes Pink Flamingos truly fascinating isn't just its shock value, it's Waters' fearless celebration of counterculture and outsider art. Every scene is designed to provoke, challenge norms, and create conversation, which is why it remains a cult masterpiece decades later. The film's over-the-top energy, daring performances, and surreal humor make it entertaining, memorable, and endlessly quotable. For modern audiences, it's a mix of camp, audacity, and cinematic rebellion, the kind of movie you can't look away from even if you're squirming. It's perfect for fans of cult cinema, drag performance, and anyone curious about the wild, experimental edge of 1970s filmmaking. 6. Female Trouble, 1974, divine chaos at its most deliciously disturbing. When it comes to the wild, untamed spirit of 1970s cinema, few films capture that raw, rebellious energy like Female Trouble, 1974. Directed by the legendary John Waters, this cult classic stars the inimitable divine as Dawn Davenport, a beauty-obsessed, criminally chaotic teenager who takes mischief to dazzling extremes. The film is a roller coaster of outrageousness, blending shock, satire, and a warped sense of humor that only Waters could deliver. From absurdly grotesque hijinks to jaw-dropping scenes that push every boundary of good taste, Female Trouble isn't just an X-rated movie, it's a full-on cinematic rebellion against societal norms of the era. What makes this movie truly awesome isn't just its shock value. It's Divine's unforgettable performance, a fearless, over-the-top embodiment of chaos and charisma. Every scene is a masterclass in exaggeration, blending comedy and transgression so seamlessly that audiences can't help but be captivated. And let's not forget the film's unapologetic commentary on fame, beauty, and obsession. It's both outrageous and oddly prescient, exploring the dark side of desire and the cost of seeking perfection in a world obsessed with image. For fans of cult classics, shocking cinema, or X-rated films that actually have brains behind the chaos, Female Trouble is a must-watch. It's messy, it's funny, it's scandalous, and it's exactly the kind of bold, boundary-pushing film that the 1970s were made for. Throw in a "Which wild John Waters character would you be?" poll in your YouTube community for extra interaction, and watch time soar. 5. Last Tango in Paris, 1973, the controversial masterpiece. Few films have divided audiences like Last Tango in Paris, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. Starring the legendary Marlon Brando, this provocative drama shocked the world with its raw, erotic intensity and unflinching portrayal of human desire. Set in the romantic streets of Paris, the story follows a grieving widower, played by Brando, and his passionate, clandestine affair with a young woman, portrayed by Maria Schneider. What makes the film unforgettable isn't just its explicit content, but its fearless exploration of grief, loneliness, and the desperate search for connection. Bertolucci's direction blends intimacy with art, crafting a cinematic experience that is both disturbing and mesmerizing. Despite facing outrage, censorship battles, and even bans in several countries, Last Tango in Paris has stood the test of time. Critics praise it as a daring artistic achievement, and Brando's performance remains one of the most powerful of his career. Today, cinephiles celebrate it as a bold statement of human emotion, making it far more than just an X-rated movie. It's a haunting, unforgettable masterpiece of 1970s cinema. Why you should watch it? If you're drawn to films that push boundaries and explore the darker side of passion and grief, this movie will leave you breathless and thinking long after the credits roll. 4. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. When you think of X-rated in the 70s, you probably imagine sleazy low-budget flicks, but George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead flipped the script entirely. Released in 1978, this isn't just a zombie movie, it's a sharp social commentary wrapped in gut-chomping horror. Romero took the growing fear of consumer culture and turned it into a blood-soaked spectacle set inside a suburban shopping mall. What makes it X-rated isn't just the gore, it's the intensity, the audacious violence, and the unflinching way it confronts the darker sides of humanity. From the iconic flying heads to relentless hordes of the undead, every scene is crafted to shock, thrill, and keep audiences on the edge of their seats. And here's the kicker. Despite its rating and gruesome visuals, Dawn of the Dead became a cult classic that influenced decades of horror, inspiring filmmakers from Quentin Tarantino to Zack Snyder. Its mix of suspense, social critique, and jaw-dropping practical effects makes it more than a horror flick. It's a cinematic masterpiece disguised as X-rated entertainment. Whether you're a horror fanatic or just curious about the wildest cinema the 70s had to offer, Dawn of the Dead proves that sometimes The best films are the ones that push boundaries the hardest. Pro tip for your viewers: watch it late at night, lights off, and prepare to never look at shopping malls the same way again. 3. The Devil in Miss Jones, 1973, when adult cinema got philosophical. When most people think of adult films from the 1970s, they picture cheap production values, simple plots, and nothing more than titillation. But The Devil in Miss Jones, 1973, shattered that stereotype. Directed by Gerard Damiano, the same visionary behind Deep Throat, this film wasn't just about steamy scenes. It dared to explore life, death, and the torment of unfulfilled desire in a way that was surprisingly introspective. The story follows Justine Jones, a lonely woman who takes her own life and finds herself in a limbo-like afterlife. Unlike the typical heaven or hell narratives, she lands in a space of existential reflection, where her earthly regrets, sexual frustrations, and longing for connection are all laid bare. Enter the devil, played with cunning subtlety, who offers her a chance to return to life, but only to satisfy her suppressed desires. What makes this film genuinely awesome isn't just its adult content, it's how it combines eroticism with existential drama. The cinematography is elegant, the music haunting, and the performances surprisingly nuanced for an adult film. Critics have even called it one of the rare adult movies that approaches art cinema, blurring the lines between morality play and erotic exploration. For 1970s audiences, this was revolutionary. It wasn't just porn, it was a cultural phenomenon that asked questions about human desire, morality, and the consequences of life choices. Today, The Devil in Miss Jones is considered a landmark, showing that even adult films could dare to be intelligent, provocative, and artistically ambitious. So if you're diving into the X-rated gems of the 70s, this one isn't just about the scandal. It's a provocative, daring story that makes you think while keeping the heat high. A true classic that proves the 1970s weren't afraid to mix philosophy with passion. Fun fact: the film's unexpected crossover appeal even led mainstream critics to take it seriously, a rare honor for an adult film in its era. 2. Babylon Pink, 1979. The late 70s were a bold time for adult cinema, but Babylon Pink, 1979, didn't just rely on steamy scenes, it delivered style, humor, and a surprising cinematic flair that makes it stand out even today. This underground gem from the era takes audiences on a wild ride through the glamorous yet gritty world of New York nightlife, complete with lavish costumes, disco beats, and a cast that truly knew how to act beyond the obvious. What sets Babylon Pink apart is its unique blend of comedy and eroticism. The film balances risque humor with surprisingly sharp social commentary, poking fun at the excesses of the era while still embracing the titillating thrill that adult cinema promised in the 70s. Viewers often forget that this film had an almost cult classic sensibility before cult classics were a thing, mixing neon-soaked aesthetics with a narrative that keeps you invested. Fans of retro adult cinema love Babylon Pink for its unapologetic boldness. The director's attention to detail in set design, soundtrack, and character development proves that adult films of this era could aim higher than mere titillation. They could be immersive, stylish, and memorable. Watching it now is like stepping into a time capsule. The music, the fashion, the daring storytelling, it's pure 1970s energy on screen. For viewers curious about the more adventurous side of cinema history, Babylon Pink isn't just an X-rated flick, it's a cultural artifact of a time when filmmakers were testing boundaries and audiences were ready to embrace the unexpected. And that's exactly why it deserves a spot on any awesome 1970s adult films list. 1. Behind the Green Door, 1972, breaking boundaries in adult cinema. When most people think of adult films from the 1970s, they picture low-budget, cheesy productions. But Behind the Green Door was a game-changer, a bold, audacious, and surprisingly artistic landmark in X-rated cinema. Directed by the innovative Artie Mitchell, this 1972 classic wasn't just about titillation, It was a cinematic experiment that blurred the lines between eroticism and mainstream appeal. The story centers on Gloria, a seemingly ordinary woman who is kidnapped and taken to an exclusive underground club, where she becomes the star of an erotic spectacle. But what sets Behind the Green Door apart is its daring approach to storytelling, lighting, and music. The filmmakers used surrealistic visuals and psychedelic sequences that gave the film a hypnotic, almost dreamlike quality, a huge departure from the crude adult films of the era. This movie also made history by breaking box office records, proving that X-rated films could draw mainstream audiences. In fact, it helped spark what became known as the golden age of porn, when adult cinema briefly entered popular culture with films like Deep Throat and The Devil and Miss Jones. The soundtrack, featuring funky, groovy tunes, added to the hypnotic, experimental vibe and made scenes surprisingly stylish for its genre. Behind the boldness, the film also showcased the era's sexual liberation, capturing a moment in American history when cinema dared to explore taboo topics with creativity and flair. For cinephiles, Behind the Green Door is more than just an adult film. It's a cultural artifact, a snapshot of 1970s experimentation, and a must-watch for anyone curious about the intersection of sex, art, and cinema. And there you have it, 13 X-rated 1970s movies that are actually awesome, a decade when filmmakers pushed boundaries, challenged audiences, and created some of the most daring cinema ever put on screen. The 1970s proved that even controversial films can become cult classics and unforgettable pieces of film history. And that's what we love exploring here on Globewise Entertainment: the bold, the banned, and the brilliantly unexpected. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, now's the perfect time to join our growing movie-loving family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into cinematic history. Now it's your turn. Which of these 1970s classics impressed you the most? Drop your favorite in the comment box below and let's start a conversation. See you in the next video.